I'll take copious notes here and hand them on to him if he's not available to do it. But hey, Coach, just congratulations on a really good start. Just a fine start again, 2 years in a row, just getting out and hitting the ground running. And maybe just give us a state of the union off the top here and just kind of where things are at. How have you met expectations? Where have things maybe fallen a little bit short that you're starting to work on, or goals that maybe you've set and you're still trying to attain? Things like that. Just kind of give us a 30,000 feet look.
Yeah, this team is different, and I think if you ask JD, and you guys do this every week, the changing look of the rosters. Like I think we've gone through it 2 years in a row. Miami's going through it. Football teams go through it. This is a dynamic era and turbulent in roster change. So how you try to construct the roster, it may be based on who's available, who gets through the draft, and all of a sudden, in the middle of August, you look in that meeting room for the first time, you say, all right, here's our team. What does this team do well? You may intend to build a certain way or look for certain things out of how you put this together, but that may not ultimately be where you land just because of so many pieces of the puzzle that have to be dumped onto the table. Then you put it together. I knew early on this team was going to have to pitch. We're going to have to play good defense. Our starting pitching, when you look at the individuals that are capable of starting games for us, the weekend has been solid. It has been solid. And, I knew Jamie Arnold had the capabilities to do it. Joey Vellini, who you'll see tonight, is different than Jamie, and they're different than Wes Mendez. Those three have constantly improved their craft. And I think the athleticism overall, the defense has been solid. I was hoping that would be the case. I feel like every time I talk about the ability to defend, we don't. Or our team, this is not just this year. It seems like when you're harping on that, you don't play as well defensively. But I'm just going to tell you what I've seen. I do like the ranginess in right field and center field. We're a little banged up in left. The three of our outfielders, quite frankly, have been banged up. So we're mixing and matching a little bit in left field. But either way, that has been functional. All the way around the infield has been fairly athletic. Fisher stepping in for Cam Smith and Carter McCulley, who we played a little bit at third. They're both very capable. The middle infielders you saw last year, I feel like they've progressed. And big Miles Bailey at first is going to be fun for a freshman at 6'5", 255 to move around the way he moves around over there it's incredible. And I was talking to some people last night about Cantu and Miles Bailey and the difference. And you have one that's a freshman and one the overall infield defense. Behind the plate, we have three options. You have West, you have Carnes, and you have Nate Semelia. And all three have been functional. West being the left-handed bat, Carnes a very decorated freshman. And we're lucky to have Bailey and Carnes on campus and get them through the draft, and that's part of the roster build that you look for. Gage Harrelson in right field, Texas Tech transfer to step in and play the way he has. He's like a center fielder. Max Williams, rangy, very secure, running things down. Those two have been outstanding in the outfield. And again, I think our infield defense has been overall athletic, rangy, the ability to turn the double play. That's shown up. So I've been pleased. Bullpen, we're a little left-handed heavy on the front end of the games, clearly, when you run three left-handed starters out there. And then we go a little bit more right-handed out of the bullpen. And we've had some guys that have thrown fairly well. Prescott, Mason Martinez. We've seen Joe Charles come back into play a little bit. He's been an experienced guy. Johnny Abraham got off to a good start, hasn't been as good lately. But the bullpen on the right side been pretty good. Benny Barrett, there's some power stuff there. Then you go to, Connor Holtz and Hudson Rowan on the left side and Brady Lau. Those have been the left-handed guys. Rowan, we had high expectations for. He was banged up early in the year after his first outing. And then Connor Holtz, you saw him so often for us last year perform. So I like the overall build of the pitching. It revolves around the starting pitching on the weekend and getting deep into these games, and then hopefully we can bring some of the right-handed octane in and navigate from there.
Okay. I'm going to step aside. Apparently, this is a more vast presser than I had anticipated. I thought this was a private endeavor, but I'll back off until the end.
Yes, sorry for the confusion. If our local media wanted to chime in with any questions for Coach to get us started today, we'll go ahead with you guys. Apologize for the confusion.
Link, it's just seems like a unique weekend where obviously it's Thursday, Saturday, but also 3 night games and just games in a series.
Recording in progress.
Well, let me backtrack for a minute. You wrap up that rough game on Tuesday night, and we're trying to pack all this stuff and load it up on the bus. And Mike's out there on the bus waiting because when you fly commercial in the morning, like it was a tough day yesterday. So Mike met us at the airport. He essentially drove all the way through the night. I think he slept for 2 hours. We had to load the gear onto the bus. The planes can't handle the equipment we had. So by the time yesterday was over with, man, that was a lot. We had a very light practice. So today, man, it's just this is kind of recover and regroup. And then when you play the later three, like you're kind of up and at them. But by the time we get back to this hotel, it's going to be very late. So I think sleeping in a little bit, letting them rest. We backed breakfast up a good bit, which then backs the guys like to have meal money, and we're staying in a cool area so they can go out and grab a bite. They like that. That kills some time for them. They don't like to necessarily have every meal in the hotel. So they get to get out, and it's beautiful, and they're walking around. So I think the day occupies itself as you kind of back up the timeline for these things. And Tuesday night, being such challenging travel situations for us, like today's almost a wash, get into the pregame preparation and meeting, and we'll be out there before you know it. So I don't think it's that out of kilter. This is one of the great rivalries in college baseball. So to have these games and the viewership and the night atmosphere and the fans, that's part of what you sign up for. So that's a positive. I think there's another event going on maybe that pushed Saturday's game to later into the evening. So we're going to actually spend 4 nights, which I can't say that I've ever done, but we're trying to, accommodate the networking and give them the slots that they want. And then with the Saturday events on campus, I think it shoved the Saturday game later. So we get an extra night.
Coach, you talk about the rivalry aspect, and it feels like we've touched on the emotional games recently. Is there a different message to the guys going for the first away weekend and obviously a rivalry, and just how do you make sure that the guys channel the emotion in the right way for today's game?
Well, we talk about the task at hand and how to execute from pitch one of all of our games. And driving that, I think, is why you see the quest and the emotion of the guys to actually perform regardless of what setting we're in. I think that's a good over for reasons that you can't quite explain in non-contentious rivalry type games. But there's a lot at stake every time you throw a pitch at this level of college baseball. Then you add the fuel of this rivalry, and then you try to almost back down a little bit to remember what the important things are here. Pitch execution, savviness of defense, your less than 2-strike and 2-strike hitting, your base running, your short game, special teams, all of that. So I tell them the adrenaline, the emotion of this may allow you to feel better. Let that feeling channel within the concepts that you're trying to perform within on the field, and you might do some special things. So sometimes I try to build it up, and sometimes I try to almost negate it a little bit and let them try to stay on the correct lane on that highway when everything around you might be moving quickly. So we'll see, but that's my feel.
Coach, you mentioned the bullpen a little bit earlier, but outside of Martinez and Prescott, it seems like a lot of the guys have been up and down, a little bit inconsistent. What have you and Mike have been doing to try to, kind of steady the ship and get multiple guys that you can throw out and trust?
Well, sometimes you push, and this week we actually backed off a little bit and tried to maybe decrease some of the throwing in between outings and uh, lighten the load in the weight room a little bit. Because when you get to this point, I'm going to deep dive for a second. When you get into the preseason and you're trying to build this, it's relatively structured and you have guardrails and boundaries. When you get in, it's a very short outing, followed by a day or two and then a longer outing. These are things that you are cautious about doing in the preseason. So as the whitewater raft is going down the river and these guys come out feeling different ways about body, arm, fatigue, we try to just adapt and adjust. And, we had a couple guys that we felt needed some actual bullpen sessions because they hadn't been on the mound a lot, like Lauk and Ben Barrett. And then there's some other guys that we've tried to almost back way down on in what they do. Micah and Jamie and Phil and myself, but your pitching coach, strength coach, athletic trainer, that trifecta in what they do every day to try to cultivate the correct pathway back to the mound, it's critical. And in this sport at every level, it might be the most critical thing in the overall well-being of the staff. So we actually backed down a little bit, Jordan. We did, because we sensed a little bit of fatigue. And like the other night, the inconsistencies of any source of consistent execution was troubling. So, and there's not a lot you can do between leaving the stadium Tuesday at 11 o'clock and back in the locker room at 6:30 in the morning. So yesterday was light and brief, but even leading up, we had tried to alter just a little bit the overall workload for the relievers.
Coach, you mentioned earlier about, roster turnover and a lot of new things. For a lot of these guys, this is their first experience in this game, in this environment with Miami, Florida State. What have you told some of these guys, especially like Joey and Wes, who haven't really had that experience on the road yet with you guys, and kind of keep them level-headed heading into this rivalry series?
Well, they know what this is about, and they have watched this. It's hard to tell them what they're going to feel. So I try to make sure I attack the business side of the routine, the preparation, the mindset. We do our scouting report meeting. Our Michael will talk, Brad will go over their pitching staff and what we can expect today. And then I'll give my holistic view of what we're doing when we leave this hotel to get on the bus and go play. So obviously the fan involvement, like it's a pretty vast swing when you're playing some of these things at your own stadium versus rolling in here where the majority is against you and it's very chirpy, and your walk to the bullpen is you get a little bit of that, and it's different. So staying on task and not acknowledging things that are going on outside of the white lines is very important. But then again, the excitement of this and the adrenaline of this, I want them to know what's coming. You might feel better on that mound than you've ever felt. So sensing and feeling how to use your stuff when your adrenaline and your heart rate and those things are up. We again, like I open this, try to settle that down a little bit and make sure we're breathing and thinking and not trying to do too much is important. So there's that balance. And you have to ride the emotional roller coaster, and you have to disregard to the best of your ability what's going on outside the white lines and in the people that are there to view and chirp a little bit. And that's part of it too.
I think you've played your last 12 games at home and 18 of 20 at home. And this starts a 7-game road stretch, and obviously a lot more road games. It's more balanced the rest of the way, home and away. What are the keys to you, of carrying success that you're having at home into road atmospheres?
You have to pitch and you have to defend. That always travels. That gives you a chance. People talk about in football, like defense travels and defense wins championships. Well, the pitching and the defense, if you can do those two things in any venue, wherever you are, you're going to find yourself in every single game. If you cannot, this thing can get away from you, like it did Tuesday. We were chasing it the whole time. So you're starting pitching, getting out of the gate, like that, it's really important. and it's probably more important on the road, quite frankly. So I hope we can do that. When you do those things, you can travel and you can go anywhere. Like staying focused on what's going on between the white lines. The mound, I think it's 60 feet 6 inches. The bases they're 90 feet away. The game itself is the same. We'll adapt to the wind. I know the prevailing winds here. Like we'll figure that out. We know what the sun's going to do. So even though it's a road game, our guys are trained to like adapt to those things in the hour up to first pitch. And you have to. You even have to do it at home. Every one of these things is a little different. But the fundamentals of your pitching, the fundamentals of your defense, and then trying to grind out some at-bats, that's the key, that especially on the road.
Jamie was on the
Sorry, go ahead, Liam.
Jamie was on a pitch count last week, obviously coming back from injury. Where is he heading into a start tomorrow? Do you expect him to be a little bit more available? I know you guys got to play it cautious when he first comes back.
We'll cap him at 180 pitches. If he gets past that, we've been conservative, quite frankly, with all the guys. I look at the other stuff in college baseball, and I look at what's going on. But we're in a different era, and it seems like a more methodical buildup might be the way to go. Because of the calendar, our season started a little bit earlier. So he will grow, but I'm not going to all of a sudden just turn that horse loose to just run around the derby track until he needs water. I mean, we're going to be smart about it. And you look at these things in 10 to 15 pitch increments, honestly, and the challenge and how much labor is involved in some of the pitches. You feel like at times it might have been a 15 pitch inning, but the labor factor of it, if there's traffic from the second pitch of the inning all the way through, those might be 1.5 pitches versus one. It just seems like sometimes it magnifies a little bit. So Micah does a great job of calling the game. I'm helping run the bullpen, really, and I'm thinking and watching and feeling what I see, and we do our best to monitor it. But sometimes even the pitch count is not the true indicator. It might be how you got to that number. Sometimes you might be at 80 pitches and didn't feel like he ever like really strained and struggled. Not just Jamie, but any arm. So there's a lot that goes into it. Closing that up, I think you have to be smart when you go 15 beyond that in an increase. You have to be intelligent.
Link with starting pitchers, it seems like they're kind of, I don't want to say finicky, but they love their routine. But you guys have not really been able to get any sort of routine here in the last month of your starting rotation. And with a Thursday, Friday, Saturday kind of series, how's that affecting guys, and how are you handling it?
Well, I think Jamie having a little bit of a shorter load last week allowed him to bounce up a little bit versus Wes, and we just did that. Micah had zero concern with sliding up a little bit. And again, we haven't had guys throw 122 pitches and 118 pitches, so I don't think we've asked a lot when you just look at the landscape overall. So I don't think it was a big deal. And when we do make these maneuvers to play these Thursday series, it does change things, and it changes Tuesday. So it's not easy, but I think in looking at just the three starters, it was not a huge deal this time. Now, as you lengthen it out and you get closer to the end of the season, if there's significant pitch counts and you're trying to reel somebody back a day, I think it has more impact. But and in this era, like the starting pitching in some senses, there's not as much just pure starting pitching all over the game as there once was, and those starting pitchers don't seem to throw as long. So the overall concern, like you said, with adjusting their week, I mean, it's a real concern. Don't get me wrong. Like, this may not have felt like a huge deal because of the workload, but it is. and it's uncomfortable in a sense. But I think with where we came off of the weekend and the doubleheader, we're in as good a spot as we could be to do it.
And just with the lineup, Link, I know you moved Cal down and you put Drew up after that strong weekend. It's only one game against Mercer, obviously. Having some more time to think about it, what do you think about utilizing Cal and Drew in those spots in the lineup right now?
It didn't. I don't know what happened the other night. Aslan, was it the lineup? Some of the fears I had of the at bat quality, like it showed that day. I mean, I can't say that we had 8 good at bats the whole night, and I don't know why. And again, I have to tip my hat. Like, the guy had some funky stuff and it was good, and we didn't recognize it. And man, Farrow had done such a nice job from both sides of the plate. Like, somebody's going to have to hit there. Somebody's going to have to hit 4 and 5 and 7 and 8. And, we talked long and hard about it. And to tell you right now, I'm ready to write the line. I'm not. Ty and Brad and I will kick it around. And I know we have our hands full with Robert today. It's not going to be easy, and we have to figure it out. Like, from a personnel standpoint, are there other people that deserve chances? I mean, there might be. But record and all that aside, and I look at what I look at, there's clearly areas here that I'm not happy with. And I've told you guys that all along. The consistency of the at-bat has not been Fisher down and Farrow. It didn't appear to help. I'm not saying it was wrong. It just didn't feel right the other night. I'm not saying it was the wrong thing. It just clearly we did not function Tuesday night with it. Not saying it's the incorrect maneuver. The result was not good.
We talked to Coach Norvell on Monday, and it sounded like BJ was going to be with you guys full time. I'm just wondering if you ended up talking to football and the results of those conversations and what the future for BJ looks like as far as this season.
Yeah, I didn't talk to them before the middle part of this week because I knew he was going on this trip. So I want the best for him. And he wanted to play baseball and he wanted to play football. And I'm not saying that's the order of operations, but he wanted to do both of these. And he's very serious about both of them. And he's as talented a freshman athlete as you could ask for. He is. After this weekend, I'll revisit with those guys in terms of their install and the timeline. And are there a couple days scattered in where he needs to slide over there so he can absorb a little bit of that side of it too? I cannot imagine what is on the plate of the football players, new offensive coordinator, new position coaches. It's a whole new deal. So I do respect that. I respect what football has to do, and I respect what BJ is trying to do. And all I can tell you, Jordan, is right now, all I can do is what is in front of me at the moment. And it made 100% sense for him to play right now. And then where we land Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I'll sort it out. And I will talk to Mike and the staff again about where we are and where they are. But that's honestly the reality and how I see it right now. I can't get too far down the track. And clearly Chase Williams, who we had huge plans for, you've seen what that looked like when he's involved. Like, he's out. And Bladen Plain, we knew what we were expecting there, and he's out. So it's a different battery of outfield players than it was when we kicked this thing off.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Thanks, Link.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Thanks, Coach.